welcome back to the tavern. In this episode of Gatekeepers, we discuss reputation. Reputation precedes more than just the characters. Sometimes it precedes events, items of legend, or even places that your characters might go to explore. Now, if you haven't already done so, please consider hitting the subscribe button, as it helps our channels grow. The channels are linked in the video description below. If you enjoyed tonight's content, please make sure to hit that like button, as it really helps us know if we're doing good or if we're doing poorly. If you don't like this episode, go ahead and hit the dislike button. I'm not going to worry about it. I'll accept it. Without further ado, let's get into it, shall we? Hello, my name's Jaide. I'm sorry I'm suffering some technical difficulties over here on my end. But tonight's episode was developed by Mar. Welcome, Mar.
Good evening.
And it's all about reputation. Also joining us this evening is going to be Shadow of Shadow and Sun.
Howdy, folks.
Like the hat.
Thank you. I've gotten quite a few.
Just reminded me I don't have my tree on.
$12 Amazon. Can't beat it. And it's not like crappy material. It's actually pretty warm. So grab one. They got other styles or colors or whatever. But I'm feeling festive as I can be, and it matches. So
yeah. I'm just going to turn on my tree real quick as soon as I find the button for it. All this smart technology, you'd think I'd just have like a clapper or something. That'd be easier. I know, right?
Most folks out there probably watching, huh? Clapper.
There we go.
Yeah. Clap on, clap off. Oh, yeah.
Yep. I remember those commercials.
Yep.
So, all right. Welcome, Mac. How you doing? Crafting. Welcome to the show.
Oh, I'm in private.
The Fame and Infinite Debate. Yep.
Yeah,
he apparently likes your hat too.
Thanks.
It's a nice hat.
Thank you. Yeah, I had another one. It was like sparkly, but black and white, and I can't find it. So I'm like, dang it, I'll just get a new one. And I found a couple more. So I'm like, 'tis the season. I don't want to hear about the apparel. Don't even. If Connell was here, he'd be like, just going to softball that in. Speaking of, where is he?
Yeah, I'm not sure.
Connell a long time. I have been pretty busy, but Connell, if you're out there watching, who the hell is Nilla?
I think he was talking to Six Nations.
Oh, I didn't see that. What's up, Six?
Yeah. So, now, Mar, do you want to lead this discussion, or do you want me to lead this discussion?
You can, I guess.
Okay.
This is one of those where it's okay. I contributed the idea, but I didn't really do all of the legwork on it. You did a bit more of that than I did, I guess.
We work as a team, so. I saw that you posted the questions late last night. And I'm like, okay, well, I'm gonna polish these up and get them in. So
yeah, it's one of those things where it's like holiday stuff. It's like, oh, that happened.
Yeah, holidays are coming. Speaking of holidays, it's going to be our topic next week. Holidays in your TTRPGs.
Oh, I wore the hat early. Is that what you're saying?
I mean, you can wear the hat next week too.
Yeah, absolutely. So
I'm trying to catch up on my boy's hat collection. I kid you not, he's got like 30 hats, and they're not like. I
used to have a lot of hats in my younger days too,
and not one of them's a baseball hat.
Not all of mine were baseball hats either. So
I mean, literally not one.
So speaking of reputation, Normally, it's the character's reputation or a character's reputation that precedes events in TTRPGs. Generally, we use it as a rumor or a plot element for the characters to get involved with a particular individual, or sometimes they want to raise their own reputation so that jobs might come easier to them or fame and riches come to them. Some players are in it for the fame. Some players are in it for the riches. Some are in it for anonymity. They're not actually looking for recognition. They're looking to do a job and go home. The Samwise Gamgees. So with reputation, though, it can be more than just an individual. It can be a reputation about items. Like, we all know the legend of Excalibur, the sword in the lake. Not necessarily the sword in the stone, because that was not Excalibur, but the sword in the lake. We've all heard of the Nemean lion, of the story of Hercules. And these places, events, or things are strewn with legend. There's whole stories and epics about them. So how do we, as game masters, develop our own legends and lore and reputation about particular items, places, or events? That's going to be the focus of tonight.
Gotcha.
So I'm going to throw this one to Mar first. You are the one who developed most of the background on this. So do you develop rich, spurious, don't think I'm saying that one right, spurious backgrounds for in-game things, places, or events? Let's start there.
Spurious. The word you were looking for was spurious.
Spurious.
See, this is actually something that I edited into the question that it didn't have before I was editing these, because listening to rumors and legends, not all of them are true.
Fair point.
And that's actually one of those things that especially when you're just starting out with like, oh, hey, you heard these rumors about this, that, and the other thing that's hidden in these ancient ruins deep in the jungle. And is all of what you heard true, or only part of it? And that was actually one of those things I put it in there, is because of the fact that having a legend about something is not necessarily going to be true. And then there's like that old trope of this guy who's legendary for being an incredibly strong fighter, except no one's seen him fight in 5 years. Is it actually true, or is it drastically exaggerated?
Okay. So do you include any of these backstories into your game?
Well, yeah, it's like it's just part of introducing people, places, and things to the story. It's like you have to give the players something to know about it, or think they know about it. Otherwise, it's just like, oh, there's a rock there. It's just.
But how did the rock get there? So then, how do you approach this idea of these backstories or these legends of things when you develop them for your game? Like, where do you start?
Well, when you're going to create a city for a game, you want to at least have a vague idea as to city's history and the histories of some of the places in the city that are important to your story. So you're going to at least think out a basic framework of that. And then when you give the players rumors or whatever about those, you decide which aspects of that framework that you've thought out ahead of time that you want to give them as those rumors.
Okay. What about you, Shadow? Do you ever develop rich or spurious backstories for things, places, or events in your game?
I used to do so more than I do now. I learned over the years, and you're going to hear this a lot from me tonight. Most players I've found, to be honest, half the time they don't care. They just want to know what their job is and go and do it. We have to avoid the info dumps. I've seen their eyes glaze over more times than not. You were in a game with me one time. I tried delivering some info, and for whatever reason, the player just didn't. Not only did not care, but actively avoided. You know, the info, the valuable clues that would have taken the story possibly in a different direction, or at least given them more information than they started with. I find it's best for all of these situations, a little bit at a time, keep it to a minute, make sure they're all paying attention, tell them what they need to know. And when they ask for it, then they get it. Otherwise, I'm not going to just keep hitting them with, names and stories and places and rumors and things. It doesn't always go over like we think it's gonna, we'd be better off writing a novel in a lot of cases, after the fact, and go, here's what you missed. Maybe, next time you'll pay a little more attention. Or, handouts are nice. You can give them things to take with them so that if they care, they'll read it when they're not at the table. Because for the most part, I find that people just want to get to rolling dice,
like what Six Nations said, like giving them bits and pieces at a time. I find that to work better than reciting an entire paragraph.
Sure. So, Shadow, so how do you avoid those info dumps then? Like, what do you like? I know that I played in that game and I saw the clues, but for the audience who didn't watch that episode of Table Breakers, like how do you implant those clues? Where do you start with developing these things?
Well, it depends on the nature of the clue. There's the books, the statues, the computer files, those sorts of things. A little bit at a time and repeat it. Have them hear it again and again, but each time with a little bit more added to it, so that they can add to it, not feel like I'm just hitting them over the head with the same information. These things are immune to freaking fire. These things are immune to fire. No. Little bits and pieces, but a lot of times players, aren't as role play as they think. They're more adventure game. And, like I've said before, read the room. If tonight everybody's, had a rough week, they just want to go kill crap, save it for later. Save the clues, save the info for when they're more in the mood, when they've got a little bit more time. Or like I said before, here's the information you found scribbled on, a piece of parchment, or here's the, excerpt from the book, maybe pay attention to it. There's going to be a test on it next week.
Well, I mean, last night we actually did a Star Trek Adventures module that was a perfect example of this, because the fact that the entire module was about investigation and learning about the location and finding out pieces about it, which we started out by knowing very little about this planet, other than the fact that they've been isolationists for most of the time the Federation has known that they existed, and suddenly decided to send the Federation a message for help. And this is one of those things you're like, that's odd. And then, just have the players go looking for information and all.
Okay. So I'm going to caveat off of that part there. How do you create those histories? Like what do you do to leave little crumbs that can be discovered? Like what are your hooks like?
Well, with this one, the basic thing was that you start out by introducing a few characters and things, and then the players, when they're investigating those, you mention more things for them to maybe look at, and then so on and so on.
Okay.
So, I mean, it's like kind of like a tile floor, where it's like, you walk forward one tile. Now you see that there's another tile in front of you, etc.
Okay. And how much effort do you put into these little nuggets or little clues for your players to find? How much effort do you spend a week doing that?
Well, this particular module was one of those things where you need to have start with a solid grasp of what the end goal is. It's like, because you can make up details along the way that are kind of sort of fit into the framework, but you need to start with a framework of the overall shape of the story, where you want the story to go.
You're muted.
Yep, see that now. And what about you, Joe? Like, how much time or effort do you spend developing these mysteries or these legends of things for your players to go investigate?
Time by, you mean like right before the game or right before the campaign?
The session, the campaign, whichever. Like, how much effort do you normally put into it?
Right now, I'm working on a campaign that I'll be running in January. First edition AD&D. Mac's going to be in it. Some other folks, I've been working on it for a long time. Technically, years. It's been in my head. Now it's getting on paper. But before the actual first game, I've got all this stuff written up, and I'm gonna go through the game, trying to predict what they're going to do, past the getting them together as a party. Once that's there, I'm gonna try, like I said, and guess what I think they're going to do, and hopefully I'll get it right. But the more background work you do before the campaign starts or whatever, you'll always come back to it. So if you write 1,000-page stack, and only go through 250 pages of it in the course of a 2-year campaign, that's pretty good. Now if they were to try to retell their story, how many pages would it fill? Probably like 50, maybe 10, depending on the player and their way with words and their memory and what they were doing, in between games, and sometimes even during the game, depending on what sort of party favors you allow at the table. I've run games where, the players, after a decade could barely scrape together 2 or 3 pages, but up here it's there, they've got the memories and the experiences, but getting it back out, not so much. And just, do as much work as you need to do. All of us, have that, bit of failed writer in us that needs to get our stuff down somewhere concrete. And hopefully, someone will go through our memoirs long after we're gone and go, oh my God, the great American novel. Yeah, fat chance. But, at least we have it, and we can go back on it, add to it, erase it, delete it, change it, whatever we need to. The more work you do, the better you'll know your own world. And that's the most important thing, is know the world, because you never know what they're going to ask. And it's really all about that. What do they care about? If they don't care, so be it. Now in certain games like Call of Cthulhu, that'll get you killed. Other games, they can hack and slash their way through just about anything and not even know what they're doing.
Okay. Now, while legends may exist of a particular person, oftentimes their legend is tied to a event or some great achievement. You had Michelangelo in the Sistine Chapel. You have Daedalus and the Labyrinth of King Minos. Do you ever build a reputation that's not just for the person that's in the game that they can interact with or hear legends of, but do you build some kind of significant event or achievement tied to that reputation? I'm going to start with you on this one, Shadow, and then I'm going to move to Mar.
Okay, with NPCs, you've got that horrible potentiality of it becoming the equivalent of a DM, PC, or the Mary Sue or whatever, and you want to avoid that at all costs. Now, sometimes, if an NPC keeps coming up, great. Let them know more and more about them. But, a good NPC should walk on stage with a bright red shirt and a little yellow symbol, gold symbol right here. They're not going to last, okay? If you want to write up their whole backstory only to have them die in, the second hour of their appearance in the game, cool. Maybe people will care later. At the funeral, they'll want to talk about the person. But I highly recommend doing as little as possible with the bare minimums that you need on paper or up here, because if they're worth their weight in anything, it's going to be as a meat shield to take the death or the wounds that were meant for the players, but the NPC takes it instead. Because people, especially nowadays with us older folks who've been around the block a time or three, the last thing we want to hear is that how great this NPC is. It's not about the NPCs, it's about the players. If they ask, if they care, you can drop hints, oh, he's a lot, he's a lot more nimble, than you'd expect from a 90-year-old guy. Things like that. Cool. Drop the hints, but don't go on and gush over your own NPCs, because the worst thing that's going to happen is the players are going to want to get them killed. The best thing that's going to happen is they're still going to die, but in the service of or in the defense of the PCs, which is really just about all they're there for. I mean, I'm simplifying it. There's some great NPCs that are going to do some great things, but they should never take the spotlight.
Sure.
And if they do, just for a little period of time and move on.
What about you, Mar? Do you ever build a reputation that's not necessarily just about the person, but about their accomplishments or their significant event that they're tied to?
Well, that's actually an example from that Star Trek Adventures thing, is that this place we went to had this reputation that was based on a defining event in their culture's history. And that event was tied to the entire story we were dealing with and trying to understand what happened. And knowing that event had happened didn't give us the story, but it gave us information about where to look at about the people and things in the world.
Okay. Now, if a specific place hosted a major historic event, or if a particular item was involved in some legendary quest, how do you let your players learn of it? Like where do you plant that seed of information or mystery for them to latch onto? I'm going to start with you on that one, Mar.
It really depends on what the story is, because like with this one, certain pieces of information were part of the pre-mission briefing, because it's a Star Trek Adventures game, so a lot of the information is kind of sort of like a lore dump, but it's a rather small one, where your characters are in their ship flying to the location where the distress call was coming from, and then they're like, okay, this is what we know about the situation before we get there. And then when you get there, you start looking around and learning other things, and each different piece of information has a different source, and then makes this big old jigsaw puzzle, but you have to find the pieces.
And what about you, Shadow? Do any of your specific places that may have hosted a major event or a particular item with some kind of legendary quest attached to it, do your players ever have a chance of learning of those things and either following in the footsteps of or repeating those events?
Absolutely. That's one of the few exceptions to the tonight's topic, I think, is locations. And of course, we'll get onto items later, and for completely different reasons. Locations, they want to know. They want to know every detail. They want to know where, what kind of deadbolts, what kind of lighting, what kind of every little, anything that they can use as a clue to, as the old adage goes, forewarned is forearmed. They're going into a location. They want to know everything, every little piece of information they can get. And I wish they were more diligent when it came to other things than just, the location, how well armed is it, guarded, that sort of thing. But, sometimes those things are just, kind of more of a mechanic-y thing and a strategy thing, as opposed to a, caring about the story. But like I said before, it's their story, not mine. So gotta, work with, what your table wants, or you will have an empty table.
Fair enough. So then the question becomes, now that we've talked about like how we seed these items or these events or places even, by seeking out these places, events, or items, how does that affect the player character's reputation in the world? If they say, I'm going to go seek out the legendary sword of a fox, what does that do for them if they've not only heard of the item, know where it was last seen, and go seek it out? Shadow, I'm going to start with you on that one.
Depends on whether they're successful or not, doesn't it?
Yeah.
If they don't achieve what they set out, they're just another one of many who just add to the infamy of the topic at hand. They couldn't find the fountain of youth. Well, welcome to the club. A lot of people in that club. A lot of people didn't find it. Sometimes I think that would be even a better outcome in some cases. Keep them wanting to go on that quest, to have their great white whale, that thing that they're always after, as opposed to, oh, you found the ruins. No, you didn't find them. These aren't the ruins you're looking for. And keep them, constantly, going after that. I can't tell you how many times, something like that has not happened when it should have. Keep them wanting. Don't give them everything they want, and give them something to shoot for. Give them that thing that it's always out of reach, as opposed to, oh, the ruins are over the next hill. There's no ruins. What do you mean there's no ruins? Well, whoever told you that, they were wrong. They never probably even left town. They spent their whole life in town, and that was good enough for them. But they're telling the story their grandpappy told them, and they're telling you, and they were wrong. Now what do you do? It's
okay.
Yeah, just
that kind of falls in line with my idea behind. You found it. Oh, you found an Excalibur replica. Congratulations. Replica? What do you mean replica? Oh yeah, you find go look in that barrel over there. I got about like 20 of them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've got a replica of the sword from the Zorro movies. It's beautiful. And it's just as serviceable. It might even be better made. But you know what? It's not the one for the movie. Sorry. The same thing with the Highlander sword. Great shape. Got it for a song. It's gone up in value, but it's not the one from the movie. And, if you were to ever find it, it's probably beat up and, not been taken care of. And, nice wall hanger, but you don't want to really have to pull it out during the zombie apocalypse. Trust me.
This actually reminded me of that quote from one of the Monty Python movies about the grail-shaped beacon. Like, oh yeah, okay, so someone got the grail-shaped beacon. All right, let's get out another one off the shelf. but like in that movie, like the legend of the Grail was completely fake. The people who were seeking the Grail thought it was real. The people who actually had it knew the legend was fake, but they're just going to play along with it because it benefits them.
Sure. Now, Mar, feel free to expound upon this. I need to get up and go take care of something real quick. So, Mar, when you're building the reputation of a specific place or event, if there are rare or even like amazing, unique items available for players to go find, what does it do for the reputation when they go seek them out? And when you're done with that question, how do you encourage your players to share their experiences about seeking out these items? I'll be right back.
Well, the first thing about seeking out items is actually one of those things that you can use as a quest seed, which, okay, players might not actually bite on it but it's something that you can just throw into random bits of dialogue. It's like someone asks about an area, you can have an NPC talk about there's a quest or a cave that has this hidden that's rumored to have a pirate treasure hidden in it. And, if they press into that, you could, give them a rumor about what the pirate treasure actually is. And, if they choose to go find it, they can find out whether the rumor was true or not. Or maybe they won't bother with it.
Yeah, players can be jackasses at times when they don't do exactly what you want, huh, Mar?
Well, like one of the things that was amusing with the thing last night was actually that people were constantly making a joke about how we were digging into rabbit holes. Although digging into rabbit holes is kind of sort of the rule when you're doing investigation in related stories.
It's going to happen. And by the way, folks, what I meant was don't have any expectations. If you, that's how you get into a railroad as opposed to a sandbox.
Mm-hmm.
Your best attitude is, I honestly, I don't care. I mean, I want to see how it plays out. I'm interested to see whether you guys succeed or fail. But as soon as you're like, oh, you didn't do what I wanted, or, that sort of thing, you are in dangerous waters. And you don't want to be in those dangerous waters.
Yeah, that's what I was saying earlier about having a end goal. And like, you have certain major things that you're expecting the players to do. However, the players might go a different route, and then you can just fill in a different route to get there, but you already know where they're going.
That sounds like a Quantum Ogre situation, my friend.
Well.
I mean, now if that's your style and that's how you do, how you roll, that the best tip I'd give you is don't ever let them know. Just keep that illusion of, oh, wow, I didn't expect this or I didn't expect that.
Well, I mean,
as soon as they, and then again, not every player, cares whether it's a railroad or not.
If the quest is to find the pirate treasure in the cave in the jungle, maybe they'll think of a different way of getting to the treasure than the one that you had expected. But, they're still going to get to the treasure.
Let's hope, yeah. Speaking of which, I'm going to be doing an episode of my own in the near future, probably by Friday on treasure, because, man, there's some tightwad DMs out there. Man.
Yeah. I mean, I used to be one of them.
Bad DM.
I didn't know any better. That was 20 years ago.
It doesn't cost us a thing. I don't want to veer off, but I started doing this thing on YouTube. Every Christmas, I invite all the people who watch the show, come over to my show for a minute and, tell me about one of your characters, and I will give him a magic item for Christmas.
Huh.
Well, will it be a pair of glasses that lets you read Snake Man runes?
Why not?
I don't remember exactly when that was, but one of the previous discussions about magic items, I actually mentioned that it's like magic items don't need to be amazing. You found a pair of glasses that lets you read the runes written by the Snake Man. Congrats. Does it help you in combat? No.
So when it comes to these, when it comes to these, these reputations surrounding either artifacts or events or even places of power, once your players have gone through, or if they just came out of a game that they were able to experience some of these things. Do you ever ask them to share their experiences with you about either previous games where, grand, artifacts or even, these places of power took center stage for a moment? And if they do any of their testimonials about those things or events influence how you approach the reputation of the places that you're going to include in your game for them sitting at your table? Mar, I'm going to start with you on that one.
That's one of those things where it's very much an if it fits thing, because a lot of the time it doesn't. Because, like I said, it's like the thing I was talking about with that whole with the weird alien planet in this Star Trek fictional setting. If we're playing Hyperborea, is that relevant? Not really.
I might argue that it will, but I'll argue it after Shadow's response. So, Shadow, when you let's say you're getting some players or have had players at your table and a game has ended, like the entire campaign has just ended. Do you ever ask them to regale you with the moments or big lead up parts that they liked or disliked?
Ask? No, I don't need to. They will eventually, regale me with their stories. And, kind of like, do you remember slideshows? Where families would go, like, lucky you, families would go and take pictures and then turn them into slides and invite all their friends and neighbors to show off. And people would politely decline or show up and then not give a rat's ass. You just have to be polite and, listen. And if it's interesting, cool, don't end it with cool story, bro. That's not going to go over well, but, see if there's, you can use it as a way to, understand what they expect and what they enjoy about a game, especially if it's with another GM, because they'll be more than happy to tell you how their other GM did things this way and better, even though, well, then why aren't you with that GM? Just saying, I just made Jesus cry. I'm so sorry.
I think you might be talking to Russ there.
Okay, because I don't think I said anything that bad, but just be polite, learn from it if you can. But as for asking them, I might do that at the beginning of a game, or vetting a player, trying to get them into my campaign. Ask them, what they're used to. Give me an example of your last campaign. What would you like out of the next one? That sort of thing. But other than those very limited situations, I don't think it's going to be a big thing. Normally, before and after game sessions, I find that people just want to, honestly talk about everything or anything but the game. They're done. They want to socialize before, after, talk about the news, their other hobbies or interests, what happened with their kids, stuff like that. Yeah, they were. That's why we don't do them anymore. Now we just have, social media to do it for us. You realize that's what
Right.
we're doing, right? We're getting suckered into slideshows every time we turn on the internet.
So, do any of those player testimonials ever influence the next game and how you approach, legends or even reputation surrounding events or places or even items?
Well,
That's you, Shadow.
Oh, I'm sorry. I was reading the chat. Can you repeat that? I'm sorry. There's a bunch of chat going on.
When players do regale you with like past games that they were part of and how the game master of that game did this really cool thing with such and such item at such and such place, do you ever take those moments and maybe use them or have them influence how you approach your next session or next game with that individual?
I'll definitely use it as a guidepost, sort of a rating system to determine what they like. What if they're probably going to tell me one of their big, glory day moments of, that particular campaign, and I'm going to try and take from it at least, maybe not the the people, places, or things, but the level of excitement, adventure, magic, and power that they're used to or comfortable with, and try to turn it up a notch. You always want to be better than the last guy who was their DM, and if they're going to tell you the greatest hits, by all means listen, and if you can one up it, great. If you're running a low magic game and they're telling you about Earth Dawn, sorry, you're in the wrong campaign.
Good luck.
Right.
Oh,
Everybody
yeah.
gets the strength, by the way. But yeah, use it. That's one of the things as GMs we have to do the most is borrow from every single moment of our life. We should be looking for those experiences that allow us to translate it into a game. Maybe not tomorrow, but a month or a week or a year down the road, definitely use it. And if you can, find some way to, make your game better, but also give them that moment to reflect on their past games, going, wow, the other game was awesome, but wow, this is just a little bit better, or this is a lot better. Awesome for everybody involved, even the guy who was the previous dungeon master, because he'll hear about it. They'll go, hey, I'm in this new campaign, and our DM, doesn't make us roll for this or that, or it's not so cheap, or whatever, and maybe that guy will learn. Well, maybe I should, give out more than copper and silver as treasure. Maybe a gem or two wouldn't hurt. It's not going to kill me. It's not like I'm actually paying for the freaking magic items out of my own pocket.
Maybe throw in a bronze ingot just for variety.
Something, but walking away after 4, 6, 8 hour session with enough money to buy drinks, and then you're broke again. I got way better things to do with my time than that.
Yeah, that's like going way too far in the not giving people things thing, because like realistically, even if all you're doing is like pickpocketing the thugs you beat up, you'd probably get more than that. And that doesn't even count as loot or like a reward for the quest. That's just, stealing stuff from your enemies.
Yeah, grave robbing. Well, find your keepers, right? Depending on the kind of character you're playing. So, what about you, Mart? Like, do any of your players ever come to you and expound upon, like, in this one game we did, this really awesome thing at such and such place, and it was really cool because X reason? And does that ever influence how you approach the reputation of some of the things or places that you put in your game?
Sometimes, because this is one of those things where if it fits and I saw someone else do it, I just might copy it without even thinking about it. But if it doesn't fit, I'm not going to do that.
Okay.
Because that's one of those things. It's like listening to all of the stories. Yeah, cool, easy, no problem. Trying to actually find uses for them just because someone told you the story. If it works with something I was already planning, maybe. If not, probably not.
Okay.
It depends on whether I have a specific motive for trying to want to use that one, and that's iffy.
Now, you see, I think I might be going the other direction with that, is that especially if I've got a brand new player who's never played role-playing games ever before, I'll ask them, okay, what kind of books are you into? What kind of movies do you watch? Like, what kind of stories do you enjoy? And once they expound upon me the themes or elements they really enjoy, I'm taking notes, like mental notes, the entire time during that conversation, because I'm now getting ideas of what to include in my game to engage that player. So when I'm asking players for, okay, well, how'd that other game go? What happened to that other game? You talk about having this really, really awesome weapon or armor. What happened with it? How did you get it? What are some of the things surrounding it? Like, what happened with it? And that's me going on basically a fishing expedition to know what excites that player, like what really gets them involved in the game. Because whatever a player brings to you as the game master, of their likes, their dislikes, their moments of exaltation from a game, that is what is hooking them. That is what is getting them into the game. That's what keeps them in the seat week by week. And they're willing to tell you about it. Like, that's the greatest part. They're willing to spill all those secrets of, yes, this is what keeps me in the game. Do these things and I'll be happy. And you can take that and run away with it like a madman. And they will continuously eat it up week after week.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Um,
that's more about like which specific aspects of the stories that the person told you that they liked and wanted to try to
mhm.
redo than about the stories themselves directly, I guess. But yeah,
Sure.
yeah.
Well,
It
I
fits in
mean,
the
but
idea.
some of that has to do with the reputation of the character that they built, but also the items they held or the places of power that they went and visited. I had several players come to me after a game, and they're like, "Hey, this like the altar of Earth was really awesome. Like the approach of it, the the how the challenges at the altar of Earth worked out." And that told me, okay, they like those kinds of challenges. I should likely include something similar for the other altars of the elements, because I was running an elemental game at that time. Very, very young, 20 years ago. But they basically told me that, they liked the rumors that led up to the encounter space, and they really enjoyed how the encounter space worked out. And again, your players are willing to tell you what they like and don't like. If you listen to them and take notes, you can really engage with those players.
Mm-hmm.
Now, let's get back to reputation of things. Does the reputation of a place or thing ever evolve based on how the players interact with it and who the players talk to about it? Mara, I'm going to start with you on that one.
Well, a lot of the times, this is part of the reason why I put in that thing with about spurious information is that the locals who live in the town near the forsaken city in the jungle, how many of them have ever been there? Probably maybe 1, 2, if that. So what they know about it, it's not particularly concrete information, old information that may or may not have been true, and they might have a somewhat distorted retelling of the story. And so what they tell people about the place after you go there and actually see it will be much different than what they told people before they heard you tell them about what it looked like. Although, how important is that in a story? Yeah, I'm sure you could think of something to do with that in a story.
I'm actually thinking of how I would approach that with a party right now, and I'll expound upon that in a moment.
Well, there is actually a trope with stuff like that, though, where there's the wise old elder who has a bunch of things that he doesn't fully understand. They're like bits and pieces of information that don't fit into a whole. And then you go find more information, and he's like, "Oh, now I know what the old legend was talking about."
Well, I'm just thinking about like if the legends of a particular place spawned, let's say, 40 years previous, by a bunch of kids going to a ruined building, and telling of what they saw as kids, where everything is so much bigger, everything is so much grander in the mind, or at least in the mind's eye. And
Or
then,
scarier.
40 years later,
Or scarier.
or scarier even, yes. And then 40 years go by and they haven't really thought about it much, and they never did return because of whatever reason. And then let's say the place gets inhabited by something, and they remember the old stories, or their old experience, these NPCs, that oh yeah, I was there 40 years ago, and it was this really creepy abandoned house, and I remember hearing moaning coming from the walls and whatnot. And so the players will get the reputation of that place, and it might be they might think, oh well, it's a haunted house. The house has been probably has a ghost or something in it, but the information they got was from somebody who'd only been there like 40 years in the past. And really what it is a bunch of bandits have moved into this old dilapidated building and are using it as a hideout.
Oh, that goes with the whole like spurious information thing, though, is because if the bandits who are living in the old place don't want the locals snooping around, they could surreptitiously spread rumors about it that make the place sound scarier than it really is.
Yeah. What about you, Shadow? Does the reputation of a place, thing, or event ever evolve beyond what you originally had intended by the players interacting with it?
Usually, but you know, to be honest, gotta say 95% of the time it's, you know, it was inhabited by this or haunted by that. And then the players cleared out and now it's safe. So it gets better. You know, it's very rarely that a place will, you know, become even more terrifying. Every once in a while that will happen, you know, where they find out, you know, that, oh, there's a dragon that lives in there. That's why it's so, you know, this or that, and we can't handle it. And then they'll go tell the, you know, the local townsfolk and, you know, whatever. Yeah, stay the heck away from there. There's a dragon in there, blah, blah, blah. As opposed to, oh yeah, we cleared it out. It's safe. You know, you can go on in and, you know, do whatever you want with it. We're on our way to the next adventure, kind of. You know, it's very rare that a location becomes, you know, its reputation becomes bigger and badder. You know, the reputation of the players that will, you know, increase for having cleared the place out. But for the most part, you know, it's kind of, you know, their job to fix whatever problem is there, and then, you know, more or less move on.
Yeah,
And
a lot of players, if they see a dragon, they're going to either kill it or die trying for some reason or other. But I
yeah,
mean, yeah, if the players,
Mostly die.
well, one thing that I thought of is that a lot of times you will have these ruins where the legend about them being dangerous isn't very specific. A lot of the time there will be these stories like, well, I mean, there was this group of guys that went there last month, but we didn't see them again. We're not sure what happened to them. But
that's the best way to do it.
right, of course. But it's one of those things that's incredibly vague and something that can change later if you your players do things and find out what happened to the previous group, then suddenly now it's a different story to be told.
So then, do you actually create dynamic environments that can change over time based on the player's actions in the game? You know, and you know, does this allow for, you know, other differing information, you know, based on the passage of time? So let's say your players do clear out a haunted house or a house that, you know, is full of undead, and then, you know, does that house remain standing? Like, what happens to it afterward? Do they ever go back and visit it again?
A lot of the time we just go somewhere else, but if you do, well, I mean, having some of the locals decide to set up shop inside it, hey, you know, why not? Yeah, that's one of those
What about
things
you,
that's
Shadow?
very
Good.
story specific.
I'm sorry. Who's
Okay.
that?
What about you, Shadow? Like, are any of your environments dynamic enough that they can be revisited again and again, but because the passage of time has occurred, that they might change based on what the players did there last?
Oh, absolutely. There's one very famous, or at least in certain circles famous, called Caliban. It was a Arduin. It was an Arduin dungeon adventure that is literally it's a location that has become an entity itself. It's a Flying Dutchman of dungeons that goes to other worlds and opens its doors and lures in monsters and hopefully player characters that will then, you know, try to go in and you know, loot it and do that sort of thing. And if they're, you know, not quick enough, it will close its doors and go on to the next, you know, alternate reality, other planet or whatever. And it just gets, you know, meaner and nastier as time goes on. It's literally like the Roach Motel for player characters and monsters. It's come on in, bring all your evil monsters of the land, come in and live here, and hopefully along the way capture a couple of paladins and clerics and goodly characters, and then they're trapped in it, and they can be trapped in it for hundreds of years, and never get out, die, whatever, that sort of thing. And next thing you know, the next adventuring party will come across their old player characters, that sort of thing. It's not the most serious of dungeons, and mind you, it's 45 plus years old. But in my game universe, many a player character group have gone back into it, having heard the rumors from their previous characters, or having gone through it, once, before in their gaming career. And of course, I always run it right around Halloween, if not on Halloween. It's sort of a tradition that I, hey, who wants to go into Caliban? And they're like, ooh. It's a lot of fun, and it's one of those things where the Arduin Adventures, each level only has 10 rooms filled out. The rest is up to the DM. Do whatever you want. It's wide open, and more adventure modules should be like that, with plenty of room to grow.
Mm. When I think of something like a dynamic environment that can change over time based on player interaction, I think of things like the Alamo, or was it what was that pass? Oh, no, I can't think of it. The pass that the Spartans. Well, no, the pass the Spartans blocked against Xerxes.
Yeah, I don't remember the name of that one either.
Yeah, I can't remember the name of it off the top of my head right now. But these places become legendary because something happened there. And if the environment is dynamic enough, the players go to this place or this scene, or even defend a place, to the man, and against almost unbeatable odds, and they somehow squeak out a victory by some miracle. Yes, the hot gates. There we go. Tripoli. Thermopylae. That's right. Thermopylae. Thank you very much. But the place becomes legendary because the few acted against the many, and somehow the legend lived on, or they squeaked out a victory by some miracle of happenstance. So when the players go and revisit it, they're reminded of their victory. They're reminded of how narrow of a victory it was. And then when someone else tries to do the same thing, but in reverse, they try to use those tactics the players employed against them at the same location, the players are like, no. See, we know all the tunnels we carved out and didn't tell anybody about. We know of all the traps we laid that were never sprung on people. We know where all that stuff is, and you can't take our, the thing that we did and use it against us. Because the players will have made changes. The players will have laid traps. They'll have, thought through things, and so they might have intimate knowledge of this place of that is now legendary, and they'll know how to use it better the next time they are there. That's what I think of when it comes to dynamic environments. Now, let's talk about mysteries and legends that might surround a particular item or thing in your game. One, how do you introduce the mystery or legend of, let's say, a particular item? Shadow, I'm going to start with you on that one. How do you introduce the mysteries or legends of it?
Usually it's either when they're looking for it or they found it. Now, if they're looking for it, they're going to want, and they want to find it, so they're going to do the research. And I'll give them little tidbits, scraps from a book or parchment or scrolls or something like that. Just give them little, little clues, little hints as to what it is, what it does, what it looks like, where it was, and keep them looking for more. The longer you hold off from giving them what they're looking for, the more they want it. And when they finally get it, it better be, all it's cracked up to be, or they're going to feel, kind of, jerked around. Or, which is more often the case for me, when they find something and they don't know what the hell it is. I mean, they know it's a sword, they know it's a wand, but they can't, it radiates magic, but they can't get it to work. Sure, they can stab somebody with it, but they know that shaking it, they know there's more in it than this, but they can't figure it out. Then I've got them hooked, because then they want to know, what is it? Why is it special? You got to let them know that, oh yeah, this is off the charts magic, but you're only getting a +1 out of it. What? Yeah, +1. Sorry. What do you mean? But you don't know. It's magic. You got a good idea that this is really, 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 magical, but now you got to go take Sage or somebody like that, to find out, what it is, what it's, command words or whatever, what they have to do to wake it up, or be able to utilize it. And then in, searching for that, I can, drop more hints and more, scraps of paper. This is, well, it looks like this, and this, passage out of a book describes a sword that looks just like what you're holding in your hot little hands, and it used to do this, and so owned it, but then it disappeared.
So, and I'd like to dive deeper into that. How do you develop the legend or the little blurbs that players find? Like, where do you get that inspiration from, or how do you go about making that legend or those information pieces?
Well, with most inspiration, it comes from some other source, whether it be a movie, a book, a comic book, a story you heard, or something you read in a game book. And I decide where, who made it, why, and then its lineage from that point on. And then I'll, slowly, write that up, or, just keep it in my head. And, that way they can't go, rummaging through my notes when I go to the restroom. And I'll just drop little pieces at a time, usually out of order. That's the best way to do it. Don't give them in the beginning. Don't do that. They don't get the beginning till the very end. And that way, you leave out the most crucial piece of information till, oh no, now it's in my hands and it won't let me get rid of it. Why? Why does it keep teleporting back to me every time I try to get rid of it? Well, you got to do more research. And then, like a good Twilight Zone episode, once they're, fully, stuck to it, then you give them the full story. And now they know they're doomed to carry around this vampiric blade for the rest of their lives. And, someday it'll be,
I actually vaguely recall something like that, where the secret to the vampiric blade was that the only way to get rid of it was to leave it impaled in the corpse of a vampire. Oh,
Noted.
So
I'll remember that.
So some of those are I've seen in the past were really, really weird, because the idea was that you pick up the sword. The sword wants to be used for a specific purpose, because that's what it was enchanted to be good at. So this sword,
eat your soul.
When you use it against vampires, it just cuts through them like a hot knife through butter. But the sword refuses to leave your possession unless you're using it against vampires. But to get it out of your possession, you have to leave it embedded in the corpse of a vampire.
I'm getting some. The sword isn't actually a sword. The sword is actually a key. Well, what's it the key to? It's the key to death. It unlocks your when he's sticking to people, unlocks their soul.
That reminds me of the A Sword of Life from Inuyasha.
So, and Mac even mirrored what Shadow said here of write the whole legend down, chop it in pieces, and then give it to them out of order. That's a great idea, actually. If you know the legend of where it was, what it was used for, and why it did, why it was used, you can then piecemeal it together, in whatever order to the players, and and then it lets them learn about it. Like I had this is 10 years ago, maybe 12. I had received an artifact in a game, and it was this like dodecahedron, and I didn't understand what it was. I mean, it was like soccer ball size too. And I didn't understand, like, what does this thing do? It's full of magic. It's like painful to look at when I use detect magic. So what is this thing? And I tried, in game, I was like doing research constantly, trying to go to libraries, trying to go to all these places that might know of this thing without ever actually telling people what I was looking for, because it's like, well, I already know that if I show this thing, people are going to try to take it away from me because it's a powerful artifact, and they're going to want it. So I'm doing research on this thing that I can't tell people about, and finally, I think it was God, I think it was like 5 months into the game, my character was fiddling with it, and I don't exactly remember what he did, but he did something, and it morphed from a dodecahedron to, I think, an icosahedron. So from like I think it's a D12 to a D20, basically. And I'm like, well, wait, it did what now? And then, now I'm looking for legends of this thing that can morph shape and change into these different polyhedron, spheres or something. Eventually, my character did find information on it, and it was a god-slaying weapon. It was designed to take the, breathe in the power of a god to prevent them from being able to use their salient divine abilities without losing them. And it ended up being that the characters needed it in a battle against a deity that was coming back. But anyway, see that thing about players telling about experiences they had with artifacts or whatnot.
Mm-hmm.
Full on display right now.
Yeah. It's one of those things, like you're always going to find ideas. But the question is whether you're going to use the ideas you find.
Right. And so how, with the legends, and then for that game, like I couldn't find the legends of these things by just going and asking people. I had to do the legwork. I had to have diplomacy abilities. I had to have oh, you want to comment on that? Okay. Go for it, Mac. But my character had to do a lot of legwork to research what this thing was. And it wasn't just rumors in a tavern or rumors, in a university. Like he had to go digging through esoteric tome after esoteric tome, and it took him literal months to figure out that it could morph form. So, then I asked, to you guys, like, how do you spread your legends? Like, who are the keepers of your legends of these artifacts or these places? And then Mac has, I know a lot of folks find it kind of annoying to hear that a player, the player tells, but remember, the player telling the story might be the coolest thing they ever did. Yes, absolutely. Mm-hmm. And that I love hearing player stories. Like I actually do. Like, oh yeah, that's really cool. And like, tell me more, because I'm going to take mental notes. Like, oh, what did that game master do? How did that work out? What was the results of that? And like, what did you do as a player in that scenario? Because I genuinely want to know, because I want to be able to up my game through other people's experience.
Exactly.
Well, that's actually one of those things that I've found to be rather interesting. And we kind of sort of like talked about that a little bit in the previous episode about the importance of having like weird hieroglyphics written on walls is that, when people are exploring an ancient ruin and they find something written on the wall, or like uh, an antique book, maybe they'll find information in that book that's lore that the local townspeople don't have, legends that are old, even by the standards of the ruins that you're standing in. Is it going to be useful information? Well, we'll find out later, I guess.
Well, I mean, finding out later. Let's get into that then. When your players finally find the MacGuffin, whatever it might be, and they've heard all of these legends that might be true, might be false. Does it meet or exceed the hype surrounding the MacGuffin, or does it fall short? What's your experience with that?
A lot of the time it has to do with what the player's personal expectations, and not so much what the thing actually is. Because I've seen some players who have very, very measured expectations where, they've done things like doing 20 Countess runs in Diablo and knowing that, yes, the Countess can drop really good stuff. Usually she doesn't. And when they go into a TTRPG and they're going through a castle looking for random loot, a lot of the time they're going to methodically check everything, because even if there's a small chance of finding something good in, say, the desk in the Countess's study, and not on her person, they know that more chances of finding loot is better than only one. And of course, don't expect the best stuff to always be on the boss monster, because why would they carry around all of the good stuff, especially if they're not going to use it against the players?
And Mac, that reminds me of Supernatural TV series, where the brothers have to do like research, on local stories or local places, just to be able to figure out and solve, whatever the case might be that they're on. I've taken a note from Supernatural many times before that the locals may know some small pieces of the legend, but they don't have the full picture. And it's up to the players to go find all the pieces, put it together, and solve, or finally put whatever there is there to rest. I really enjoyed like the seasons, like the first 2 or 3 seasons of Supernat, because that's what the focus was. It wasn't just it was Monster of the Week, sure, but it was also like going to place, find out what happened, find out what they can do to put an end to it, an actual end to it, and moving on to the next mystery or next place to go to.
Well, I mean, like for a real world example, there is an ancient wall in South America where the local legend about the wall is that their ancestors, when they first came to the area, found the wall there, and their ancestors didn't know who built it. See, this is though an example of like in games, you will often have the trope of ancient ruins. Like, okay, but if it's truly ancient, are the people in the local town actually going to know what it is or who built it?
Oh, likely not.
Which is
I mean, you
kind
might
of
have one old sage who's researched as far back as he can go.
which is why I was going earlier with that whole thing of like going in the ruins and finding things in the ruins that are hints as to the nature of the place.
Okay. What about you, Shadow? When your players finally get a hold of the MacGuffin or whatever they're searching for, does it typically meet or exceed their expectations, or does it fall short?
It never falls short. I always absolutely try to make it exceed their expectations. They went through all the work to get the thing. Sure. Now, it's gonna be, better or more powerful or cooler than they thought. But there's always going to be a catch. There's going to be some price to pay built into it, one way or another, whether it's somebody else is looking for it or it's got this side effect, it causes radiation poisoning, or, it, shortens your lifespan, or, needs human sacrifices or something, something crazy. Well, not necessarily crazy, but something about it that they were not expecting. And there's going to be a price to pay for continuous, ownership of said item. There's probably a reason why it got left in the ruins, or, it was, imprisoned in a block of stone or something like that. Nothing is ever quite as it seems, unless they're like looking for like one of those, like let's say it's a mundane thing, but it's still a magic item. Like they're looking for a ring of fire resistance. I'm not going to, bend them over, I'm not going to just say, here's the magic shop, it's $8,000. But, if they want to go find one and they finally, find it on the dead adventure in the dungeon, okay, cool. You found it. Great. Awesome. But I'm talking about, and I assume you're also talking about the next tier, whether it be an artifact relic kind of thing, or whatever, however they classify the next level of powerful things, even if it's the Varanti disruptor, it's going to have something about it that's, some sort of price, some sort of, side effect, something like that. Even if it's, like I said earlier, if it's just somebody looking for it, well, that could be worse than finding it. Now you've got this adversary who wants that thing. They'll start out, I'll give you $1 million gold for it. What? No, you know what I mean?
The Varanti disruptor is such an odd example to use, but it's one of those things where like the in-universe lore behind it is.
Hey, that was for you, man. That was for you. I may not be a Trekkie, but I watched my fair share. You're welcome.
But yeah, it's like only a handful of people in universe had even heard of them because most empires had no interest in using them.
I was tempted to go with the Lassiter, but that's an even more obscure reference.
I know of the Lassiter.
Best show ever.
Okay, so just in case people in the audience don't know about the Varanti disruptor, the gimmick with the Varanti disruptor is that it kills you just as much as an ordinary disruptor will. It's just that it does so more slowly.
It's a more cruel weapon to use.
Yeah.
Yeah, I do remember the episodes that had mentioned it, and it came up only a small handful of times, but I do know of it, and that's kind of like what we're talking about. People know of this thing. They've heard the stories of it. They may hate, like or dislike or whatever the case might be, based on the stories they've heard. But can they actually go find one and pick it up? Possibly. Maybe not. And as far as your, ring of fire resistance, my favorite time, if people are looking for a ring of fire resistance, they might find one in a situation where it's like an active volcano, and they come across a corpse that has a fire resistance ring on it. It's like, wait a minute, they were wearing a fire resistance ring in the volcano. How did they die? Well, fire resistance rings are great for protecting you against fire, but not against fast moving wooden shafts with stone or metal tips on them.
Okay, I was going to go with
mention the added irony of having to go into a blazing hot place to find the thing to protect you from blazing hot places.
Right.
The logic I was actually going to go with is like to find the materials you need to craft a ring of fire resistance. You need to find a unique ore that, oh yeah, by the way, the ore veins, the only known ones still in the world are inside that volcano over there.
Yep.
Right.
And of course, then when you go into the volcano, you find out that there's a group of flaming serpent people that actually like ring of fire resistances and don't want you to steal their materials to make them.
Right. Yeah, and they're not actually salamanders. They're like Yanti or something. They just prefer the warmth. We often talk about, or it's often said that to the victor go, or the victors write the histories, especially histories that favor their view. If your players are siding with or somehow aligned with a specific in-game faction, and that faction has a particular lore or legend or reputation built around a particular event or place, does that color, or does that not just color but stain their the player character's perception of that place or event, or do your players allow themselves to gain influence from outside of that faction, or do you put that potential there that they can learn about what the other side thinks or has lore about that particular thing? Mar, I'm going to start with you on that one.
That is one of those things that it's such a multi-part question, and the different parts of it, different stories work different ways. And I mean, like, if your campaign is going to be like building up a fortress city of like your own personal stronghold, having your city change over time and the reputation of your city grow over time, that is something that's a very potent thing. I mean, that's actually something that's come up in Hyperborea campaigns, is that in one of our games, the plot seed was that our group had established our own little personal fiefdom, and someone is like, okay, we heard you guys did this thing over there, so we're going to ask you to help us with this problem we have. And it's like, oh hey, new quest. And the quest was presented as being the result of NPCs having learned about deeds that our characters had done. Granted, this was the kind of deeds where it's like, we want you to kill our enemies for us, please. But yeah.
What about you, Shadow? Do your players' perceptions or information come from just one source? Like, is it always colored by the source that they are aligned with? Do they ever attempt to get the other side's information?
Well, there's the old saying, there's two sides to every story, but the reality is there's actually three. Their side, and the truth somewhere in the middle. And they're if they're wise and diligent, they'll find two different sides of that coin. But once they get there, they're going to find out that there's things that they did not know. Otherwise, it's too easy, and you take away a lot of the fun and the mystery, the excitement of the unknown, because that's the scariest thing out there, is the unknown. And if you neglect to throw that aspect into your campaigns, you're missing out greatly. You want them to think they know enough to get them enough information to get themselves killed, but then when they get there, they find out, oh wow, boy did we come into this half-cocked. There to serve man. Right. You want to leave stuff to the imagination, get their fears all worked up, and then when they get there, they're 10 times worse. There's nothing worse than the word anticlimactic. You get there and like, oh, we knew this was going to happen. No, you didn't. There's no way you should know. And for those tidbits, don't write them down, because they will find them. You're going to get up to go to the restroom, go get a drink, and somebody, one of your speed readers out there, is going to be like going through your notes and like, aha. No, don't write it down. Keep it up here.
I take my notes with me.
Well, to serve man is actually an interesting example, because it fits into the whole spurious information catalog, is that no one knew what it was, but people had all these wild ideas and rumors floating around it until someone figured out how to decipher the book.
That was a classic.
One of the
crap out of my boy when he saw it the first time. It was a little tyke. Unfortunately, I'm living through time enough to at last. I've got all the books I want, and I can't get through one of them without falling asleep after 5 freaking pages.
Now, you see, the way I've used this situation where the players were aligned with one particular faction, that's all they ever allowed their perceptions or the legends to color their expectations of what the MacGuffin was. They were told it was the I can't remember. I think it was the sword of Zephyrin or something like that. The sword of some person or place or event that had happened in the past, and they were expecting a large, like 10-foot diclave sword. But when they were up against the other faction, when they got captured by the other faction, or allowed themselves to be captured, I can't exactly remember what they decided with that. They were overwhelmed. Let's put it that way. They learned that the legends of the opposing faction spoke of a battle standard that could hold back the tide of any combating force. But the faction that they were coming from spoke of a grand weapon capable of stemming the tides of battle and cutting down thousands with a single swing. When they finally found the object, it was a pole that had a like a crossbeam on it for holding a banner. The banner was missing, and the banner was actually what the MacGuffin was. The banner was enchanted with can't remember exactly what the spell was, but the banner was enchanted in such a way to disallow passage of troops or disallow passage of living things through a barrier. And when things crossed through the barrier, they died instantly. Like, and that's what the sword was, or at least that's what it was called, was the sword of something or other. So when the players finally found the banner and they realized the power of this thing and the range it affected, it literally affected anyone who could see it on the battlefield. And if it moved, it didn't affect you. So if you were moved physically into its range because it moved toward you, you didn't have to worry. If you were charging the banner and it was active, that is when you had to worry. And I don't remember the full story. This was over 20 years ago. But the players, when they found out what it was, they're like, we can't allow either side to get their hands on this thing because it has so much potential for misuse or abuse. So they ended up taking it somewhere to have it disjoined and destroyed instead.
That's messed up, man.
They were hunting a grand weapon to win a conflict, and then when they realized both sides were going after the same artifact to end a hundreds if not thousands of year conflict, they're like, this weapon has the potential of being horribly effective for all of the wrong reasons.
That's also one of those things that makes me wonder. It's like, okay, if this is such a powerful weapon, what happened to the people who wielded it?
Exactly. No, what are the legends of how it was created? Why was it created? Who created it, and why? You get somebody on the battlefield with the Medusa shield, and they suddenly are just being surrounded by statues constantly. Like how much of an effect on a battlefield would you have if you had the legendary Medusa shield?
That's an interesting artifact from Greek mythology, because who wielded that in battle in Greek mythology?
That would have been. Now I can't. I have trouble remembering all the names.
The goddess Athena.
Was it Athena?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
That was literally a god tier weapon.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I know it wasn't one of them. Achilles, Hercules, or Perseus. I knew it was a woman. I just couldn't remember if it was Dionysus or if it was. I was thinking Persephone there for a moment.
Dionysus isn't a woman. Dionysus is the
No.
god of getting drunk in bars. You're probably thinking of Diana. Diana was the goddess of the hunt, not the goddess of warfare.
That's right, goddess. Yeah, I was thinking of Diana. Anyway, but I mean, if your players get a hold of something like the Medusa shield, and suddenly they're turning entire fields to stone, and they hand it to the side that they thought was going to use this thing responsibly, and the general they handed it to marches into a city that is opposing him and turns the entire city to stone. Then are the players actually the good guys? They've got to wrestle with that morality themselves. And what do they do against such a shield that they handed over because that's what they were told to go get?
I think you're going to want to go after the guy with the earthquake spell. Tell him to hold off for a bit. Some of those folk are innocent. And some of them would make really good fountains. So,
attempt to have a powerful wizard assassinate the guy, perhaps.
Right. Well, I mean, and the player characters. This guy has been their sponsor. He's been supporting the player characters all this time, giving them all the resources they need. They've never wanted for anything, and all they have to do is go complete missions for this guy occasionally. Not all of them are awful missions. Some of them are literally like go rescue this town from X thing. They believe in this guy, and then suddenly, once this guy has this ultimate weapon, that they went and got for him, and he turns against his enemies with absolute malice and hatred towards his enemies, to the point of, okay, now that I have this thing, all of my enemies will turn to stone, and I will crush all the statues so that nobody could ever rescue them. He goes so far down this pit of darkness that he's now the villain, and the players have to figure out, what do we do about this? Like, is this our responsibility to take care of this guy or take that item away from him? Like, I love my moral dilemmas for my players. What can I say?
My players have morals, so.
Well, I mean, going into the whole reputation thing, it's like, what if the people of that city find out that you were the one who did that? How would they treat you as a result?
Assuming anybody's left, yeah, exactly. Like, your player character's reputation is going to precede them wherever they go, and if it's found out that they were the ones who handed over the devastating artifact, people aren't going to be kind to them. Unless they're, on the same side. So, and that kind of gets into the opinions of and reactions of some of the NPCs. Can the NPCs influence the reputation of some of these items, or some of the characters' ideas of what these items are and can do, or places even?
That's actually one of those things that's interesting from the Legends perspective, is that the players often aren't going to know what the item's stats are solely by legend. A powerful shield that will protect you from your enemies. How does it protect you? Legend doesn't say. Legend just says that whoever wields the shield will be protected from attacks.
Yeah. And so I mean, how do you populate your world with NPCs that react to the presence of certain of these certain things, places, or events? Like, how how do you populate the world with them? Mar, I'm going to start with you on that one.
that's one of those things where I like to do the whole brick thing. It's like you introduce something and then you introduce another thing. Like, yes, you will have this end goal sort of idea, because you're not just going to like start building a yellow brick road going off into the sunset with no plan. You're going to want to have the yellow brick road go to certain places, and the players are going to do stuff along the way. But the question is, what that's going to be. But you again, you say you have to, if you're going to build a legend, you need to have in your mind the idea of what that legend actually is for. Then you can seed hints about it. Because if you just start with like random nonsense, like, oh, there's a cave with that maybe possibly has some sort of weird magic sword in it, and you haven't actually decided what it is, it makes it harder to put in hints about how to use the sword if you personally don't know what it is. And Mac Thompson wants a familiar that's a seal as a bodyguard. Okay, sure.
What about you, Shadow? How do you populate your world with NPCs? Well, actually, no, I know you populate your world with NPCs that might be able to react to the presence of a certain artifact or, certain event that, is going to take place. And so can you expound upon how you do that and your methods?
Normally I would, describe the 33% rule. 33% of the people love it, 33 hate it, and 33 don't care. But in a game like this, 95% of the population are, NPC, like real world version of NPCs, people who just, don't really have a stake in the game. They just want to, get through life with their head down and, not be noticed and not, get caught up in, some grand adventure. But then there's the 5% that are going to make up, the bad guys and the good guys that are going to help and hinder the party. And, depending on the situation and who they meet, they'll be one of the 2 or 3 categories. And, it really just depends on, who they're speaking to at the moment. Hopefully it'll be, more of the 5%ers, the higher level NPCs, the former adventurers, the kings, the queens, the movers and shakers of the world. I try to, get the players into the upper echelons. I like high level games. The whole mud sword, 0 to stay a 0 for way too long until they're just about, tired of the game. And then, dangle that little bit of, acclaim, in front of them just as they're ready to quit. I don't like to do that. I want to get them, up into, the upper echelons of society, even if they're just a cut purse or a thief or something like that. I want them to at least get some acclaim, some notoriety under their belt so that they can, move into the things, because, in a lot of games, the low level people, they pose no challenge. They're unable to, whether it be combat or anything else. They're just they're nobodies, and they're just bit players in or extras in the grand scheme of things. And I try to get them away from those kinds of people and into the people that have all kinds of different machinations going on. Maybe they seem like they're helping, but they're really in it for their own benefit, or they're pretending to be a good guy, but they're really the bad guy, or the bad guy is really just I hate to use the trope, but misunderstood. And if you found out more about him, you might actually side with him or her than the people who sent you on the mission to get that sort of thing going. But for the most part, I want to bring in the the cameo appearances of the star actors, from other, things, so that it makes the story more interesting. Because I always like to look at every game like it is a novel, even if I'm not going to write it. Somewhere out there, the story may get told again, and nobody's going to care about the 0 level porters and bearers and butchers and bakers and candlestick makers. They want to hear about the more important people.
Sure. When I fill my world with NPCs that players can interact with, most of the NPCs know only that which is within their wheelhouse. A miller's going to know about milling. They're going to know about taking care of mills. They're not going to know about the grand artifact held in the caverns of lost whatever 10 miles away. If they've heard of it, it's going to be a rarity. Certain people are going to know certain things, and they might be able to direct players to someone who might know more. And your players kind of have to take that in stride. Like, oh yeah, I'm going to go ask the miller about this ancient artifact I found in Farmer Fred's field, see if he knows anything. And the miller should be like, this is the first time seeing of this. I can't help you. I'm sorry. And he's going to send you away. Ask the right questions to the right people. And if you don't know the right questions to ask, take a break from the table, break character, ask the game master, what are we missing? Like, is there something that, some piece of information that we need? Is there, some clue that we missed? Can I have a hint or something? Because I'm lost. I've had to do that a couple times with my game masters. Like I missed some critical, like 1 or 2 words in a sentence, and I had to ask, can you repeat whatever it is you said earlier, because I missed it.
I mean, like that dreaded comma thing where moving a comma 1 word to the left changes the meaning of a sentence. And things like that, where it's a very specifically worded sentence, when you hear it and your brain jumbles up the words, you're like, wait, what?
Mm-hmm. And sometimes, it's just my interpretation of how things are said. Sometimes I have to run it through my head a couple times and be like, wait, is that really what was said? And I'm like, no, that can't be how I heard it. But so, asking the right questions, or even asking the game master, okay, what's a better question to ask? What am I missing here? And your game master might, be willing to work with you and be like, oh yeah, well, here's what you've discovered so far along the way, and here's who you've asked. Here are the other people in town that, you could ask about this, and list them in whatever order.
If you ever find yourself in that position as a player, never hesitate to look at the GM and go, I think we're missing something. I feel like we're missing something, and just watch the look on his or her face, and you'll find out you're always right. and if they're a decent GM, they'll probably hook you up with a little bit more info, just because we love to never shut up.
I don't know why this thing keeps jumping around on me. There we go.
Is Max in the show? I didn't see him.
No, I think Bruce mistyped Mac.
Oh, okay.
There we go. Did you ever read the book of 12 Swords?
Yes, I did. I had responded later down the road. I used that. I used the idea of those artifactian swords at least once, but one campaign I actually borrowed quite heavily from it, with the ultimate versions of the sword out there scattered around my world, and of course they had to go try and find them. Dumbasses.
So How would dealing with reputations, of in-game elements that can change based on player choices? How would you allow for the reputation of a place or a thing to change based on how players interact with or choose to deal with certain things? Shadow, I'm going to start with you on that one.
Well, they're going to be the ones to find out what the real story is, and then depending on their integrity and what have you, and their ability to propagate the message, it's going to be their job, or at least their responsibility or duty to let people know. Yes, that place is in fact haunted. Don't go up there. We need an exorcist. Is there an exorcist in town? Or maybe we're going to have to write some letters and find a a church that's willing to bring one in, because our priest is just not powerful enough to rid the place of this ghosty or banshee or what have you. Once they get that info, it's on them. They're going to be the only ones with that information, and unless they want more deaths on their hands, they should do something about it.
What about you, Mar? How do you allow for the reputation or in-game elements to change based on how the players' choices to deal with said thing come about?
Well, I mean, like the simplest one is, you go to a village. Do the people actually want to have you there, or do they want you to go away? If they think you're, murder hobos, they're probably going to be less interested in having you in their village. But if
Okay.
they're scared enough of you, they're basically going to be like, "Oh, you're here. Okay, please don't hurt us." And that's probably about as far as it'll go. They're not going to be happy to have you there. They're not going to try to help you. They're just going to placate you.
Okay. I'm going to go ahead and skip to the last question because this one might be a little more involved. And that is, how would you create challenges or puzzles associated with with the MacGuffin that evolves as players progress and uncover more information about it? Amar, I'm going to start with you on that one.
I mean, this is one of those things where if your goal is, some research into finding an ancient secret, having a reputation that the local scribes trust will make them more amenable to giving you the information you want. And maybe possibly they'll be more willing to help you with expanding your search parameters. Because, it's like maybe they don't know, but maybe they have an idea as to someone who might know. But under normal circumstances, they wouldn't send someone to meet this person because it's a person who, well, they have reason to believe this individual might be in danger if the wrong people went to visit them.
Certainly. What about you, Shadow? How do you create your challenges or puzzles associated with the MacGuffin that evolves as players progress and uncover more information about the MacGuffin?
I just crank up the heat. I don't do the puzzles so much. Either they end up being too easy or too convoluted, and I'm not a real big fan. It's kind of a trope that's overused, but with challenges, I just pump it up, and I don't have a problem making a challenge insurmountable. That just means they got to go back and regroup. I don't want them being able to walk through every encounter or every challenge thinking that they got this. To the contrary, I'd like them to go in with their knees knocking a little, thinking, oh, we're all going to die. And then, maybe someone does, maybe they lose a couple of PCs or better yet NPCs and run for the hills with the knowledge of what they now need to, come back and take on this challenge. Just because they hear of something, there's no reason why they should, go into it, knowing this will be a piece of cake. No, it's not going to be a piece of cake.
For a simple analogy, it's like, oh, we have decided that our ladder is not tall enough. Now we need to go find a bigger ladder.
That'll work. Or a better mousetrap or what have you. In the old days, it was more like that. You wouldn't just walk in and be able to slay the dragon. You would get a couple of hits in, and then, oh crap, we're gonna die, so let's get the hell out of here. Find a way to skedaddle, get the hell out of there, and come back to fight another day, preferably stronger, better, wiser at the very least, and better prepared. It really shouldn't be that easy. And I know later games really try to put the kibosh on that, saying it's got to be a fair fight everywhere they go. If not, no, they need to get their asses handed to them more than once. It should be the norm. Otherwise, there is no challenge.
This goes back to how I mentioned in one of the previous episodes that enemies in a game are not necessarily cannon fodder to be killed like loot pinatas. Enemies are often an obstacle to be overcome and not the goal in and of itself. I mean, and like with the dragon, it's like, are you really there specifically to kill the dragon, or are you there to steal the ancient Silmaril crystal that the dragon has buried in this hoard?
Yep. So, as far as challenges or puzzles that evolve as players take on new information, I can only think of one in particular, and again, it goes back to what we called the Happy Fun Ball, because we didn't know its name. We never actually found out its name, and it was this deity slaying device that it stole the power away from deities just long enough for us to be able to actually inflict harm on them. We used it to great effect against a mad deity who was, I can't even remember what the reason the deity had gone mad was. But I do remember it was up to my character to continuously pour magic into this item to stop the deity from being able to do a lot of his deity powers against the party, because otherwise we would have just got absolutely wrecked.
Right. This is
capital W on that.
This is the sort of god tier magic where he's like, yes, I am going to speak your name, and now you will drop dead.
Right. The artifact kept all those powers on lockdown. Granted, my character was also locked down. I couldn't do anything except channel power into the device. But it was so memorable because we started out with it really, really early on, like the first month of the game, and I kept carrying it with me, trying to figure out, like, what does this thing do constantly. And I had a breakthrough, and I started casting magic into it to see what would happen. My party was completely against the idea because we knew nothing about this, and literally nothing. And then once I started discovering it could morph, it could do these things, it could have magic affect it. I started taking that information to the libraries, the universities in the game world, just to decipher what this enigma was. It took months, but my character finally pieced it together, like the last time it was ever seen. And I found my character found rather a charcoal rub of a mural that was thousands of years old. And it showed this thing being lifted into the air and having arcs of magic, drawn into it. And in the mural was a depiction of a god war, and that this was the weapon of the god war. And that's how we figured out, like, oh, we know what this does now. We now know what our next mission is, because we'd been plagued by the mad god for months by that point. Like all of his minions and whatnot were trying to get what we were calling the happy fun ball, and it was just wave after wave of these deific minions, and we finally pieced it together. That's why the mad god wants it. He doesn't want us to destroy him. I guess they knew something we didn't. What happens on a critical? I must have missed something. Certain components of beer mug.
I think he means like rolling for success on attempting to cast summon bar winch with that pile of ingredients.
Oh, I see that now. Yeah, that's what they get right there.
Or you
That's
summon
critical.
Roseanne Barr.
Right. So I do want to thank everyone in chat for hanging out with us. Mar, who are you and where can they find you?
I hang out with the Legion of Myth guys a lot, and I have a YouTube channel and a Twitch channel that you can look at the stuff on. I've been doing a lot of stuff with talking about the plots of various Star Trek episodes, and there's a bunch of really weird plot elements in old Star Trek episodes that will give you food for thought. Some of them were very, very interesting to revisit, because I revisit these. I'm like, oh yeah, I forgot that was even a thing in that episode. Huh.
You can find a link to Mar's channel in the video description below. Shadow, who are they and where can they find you?
Well, they can find us on YouTube and Rumble. It's just like it says in the title. It's me and my son doing gamer stuff and father and son things, trying to, bring more people into the hobby, within reason. There's certain people. No, stay away. No, I'm kidding. If you're into these things, and you want to learn a thing or two, we'll try and share our combined experiences, of gaming and painting and crafting and, just having fun in the hobby for the most part. It's, it's an absolute joy to be out here doing these things. And, if you've got a child and you want to get them into the hobby, maybe check us out and, see if you want to, participate in some of the things we do, between the crafts and the painting and the different games that, we try to play that are, not the most complex, crunchiest, hardcore games, a lot of entry level stuff to get the youngins into the hobby.
Awesome. And as for me, I am Jaide, and this is my Tabletop Tavern. If you haven't already done so, please consider hitting that, let me find it, that subscribe button to this channel, and the channel's linked in the video description below. If you enjoyed our content, please hit that like button. It lets us know we've done a good job and we've entertained you for, the last 2 hours. If you didn't enjoy the content, I'm a fair person. Hit that dislike button. That's what it's there for. And we'll see you next week with Gatekeepers. How do we include holidays into our games? Have a good night, everyone.
Happy trails.